If you're reading this, you know how cruel families can be when money's involved. My name is Catherine Wells, and at 52, I thought I'd seen every shade of betrayal possible. But standing in that musty law office 3 days after my mother's funeral, I discovered that some wounds cut deeper than you ever imagined they could. To my eldest daughter, Victoria, I leave my home at 1847 Willowbrook Avenue, valued at approximately $1.2 million, along with all furnishings and my investment portfolio. The lawyer's voice droned on with practiced indifference. My sister Victoria sat ramrod straight in her designer suit, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She'd flown in from Manhattan for exactly 4 days, one for the viewing, one for the funeral, one for the will reading, and one to arrange for the house to be cleaned out and sold. Efficient as always. And to my younger daughter, Catherine, I leave the backyard greenhouse and gardens, along with all contents therein. Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched slightly. The greenhouse? That crumbling glass structure where Mom had puttered around with her plants for 30 years? I could practically see the calculations running behind her Botox-smoothed forehead. That's it? Victoria asked the lawyer. Just the greenhouse? The will specifically states the greenhouse, the gardens, and all contents, Mr. Henderson confirmed. We left the office in silence, but Victoria couldn't contain herself once we reached the parking lot. Well, Kathy, she said, using the diminutive I'd always hated. I guess we know where you stood in Mom's priorities. Her laugh was like ice cracking. A greenhouse. What are you going to do, start a flower shop? I wanted to remind her that I was the one who'd spent 5 years caring for Mom after her stroke. The one who'd moved back home, putting my teaching career on hold to manage her medications, drive her to appointments, and listen to her stories about her beloved plants. Victoria had visited exactly twice in those 5 years, both times to complain that Mom wasn't maximizing her assets properly. But I said nothing. Experience had taught me that arguing with Victoria was like watering weeds. It only made them grow stronger. The drive to Mom's house, Victoria's house now, took 15 minutes through the tree-lined streets of Millbrook. The Victorian house sat on 2 acres of meticulously maintained property. Mom's pride and joy had always been her gardens, and the greenhouse in the backyard had been her sanctuary. I'll give you a week to clear out whatever junk is in there, Victoria said as we pulled into the driveway. I'm meeting with a real estate agent tomorrow. A week? Don't be dramatic. How much could possibly be in a greenhouse? Famous last words, as it turned out. I waited until Victoria left for her hotel before walking to the backyard. The greenhouse stood at the far end of the property, a Victorian-era structure that Mom had lovingly restored over the decades. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the glass panels, casting prismatic patterns across the gravel path. I hadn't spent much time in the greenhouse during Mom's final years. She'd become increasingly protective of her space, claiming she needed quiet to properly tend her special projects. I'd assumed it was just age making her more territorial about her hobbies. The door opened with a soft creak, and I stepped into what should have been a simple potting shed filled with clay pots and gardening tools. Instead, I found myself in what could only be described as a professional botanical laboratory. Modern grow lights hung in precise grids above rows of plants I'd never seen before. Temperature and humidity gauges monitored conditions with digital precision. A small computer workstation sat in one corner, connected to sensors throughout the space. This wasn't a hobby greenhouse, it was a research facility. What were you really doing out here, Mom? I whispered, running my fingers along the edge of a sterile work table. The plants themselves were extraordinary. Some looked almost prehistoric with their unusual leaf patterns and growth structures. Others appeared to be orchids, but unlike any orchids I'd ever seen. Their colors were too vibrant, their patterns too perfect. On the workstation, I found notebooks filled with Mom's careful handwriting. Scientific names in Latin, detailed growth observations, genetic markers I didn't understand, charts tracking pollination experiments, hybridization attempts, and something called commercial viability assessments. But it was the filing cabinet that stopped me cold. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, from botanical gardens, universities, and something called Biodyne Pharmaceuticals. All addressed to Dr. Margaret Wells, Doctor. My mother had been many things: devoted wife, caring mother, passionate gardener. But she'd never been a doctor. She'd barely finished high school before marrying Dad at 19. The letters told a different story. For the past 15 years, apparently, Dr. Margaret Wells had been conducting groundbreaking research into rare orchid hybrids with potential pharmaceutical applications. The correspondence referenced patents, licensing agreements, and research grants totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. I sank into the desk chair, trying to process what I was reading. My mother, who Victoria always dismissed as just a housewife with a garden hobby, had been a self-taught botanist conducting research that had attracted attention from major pharmaceutical companies. A noise outside made me look up. Through the greenhouse windows, I could see a figure walking across the lawn, an elderly man with a trim white beard carrying what looked like a briefcase. I met him at the greenhouse door. "Ms. Wells? Catherine Wells?" His voice carried a slight accent I couldn't place. "Yes? I'm Dr. Henrik Larsson from the university's Botanical Research Department. I worked closely with your mother for many years. I'm terribly sorry for your loss." He extended his hand and I shook it automatically. "I'm afraid I don't understand." My mother wasn't affiliated with the university. Dr. Larsson's expression grew puzzled. "Not officially, no. But Margaret was one of our most valued research collaborators. She discovered 3 entirely new orchid species and developed hybrid strains that could revolutionize pharmaceutical manufacturing. The world seemed to tilt slightly. I think there's been some mistake." "No mistake." He gestured toward the greenhouse. "May I? There are things she wanted you to know, but only after she was gone." We walked back inside, and Dr. Larsson moved through the space with obvious familiarity. He stopped at a section of plants I'd barely noticed. Small, unprepossessing orchids with muted purple blooms. "These," he said reverently, "are worth approximately $8 million, I laughed. I couldn't help it. $8 million? They're just flowers. These flowers produce a compound that's showing remarkable promise in treating Alzheimer's disease. Your mother developed this particular hybrid after 7 years of careful breeding. Biodyne Pharmaceuticals has been trying to license the patent for 2 years. My legs suddenly felt unsteady. Patent? Dr. Larsson pulled out his phone and showed me a screen. Patent number 11247893. Filed under Margaret Wells, holder of exclusive rights to Orchid AC hybrid strain MW47. Current licensing offers start at $12 million. I grabbed the edge of the work table. $12 million. That's just the beginning. If clinical trials continue as successfully as early testing suggests, we're looking at a treatment that could help millions of people. Your mother would have become one of the wealthiest botanists in history. But she never said. She lived so simply. She clipped coupons, for God's sake. Dr. Larsson's expression softened. Margaret was a remarkable woman. She cared more about the research than the money. But she also cared about justice. Justice? He walked to the filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder I'd somehow missed. "She knew about your sister's plans." "What plans?" "To sell the house immediately and use the proceeds to expand her real estate business." Margaret felt that if Victoria was going to benefit from a lifetime of investments without having contributed to the family's well-being, then you deserved to know the true value of what you'd inherited. The folder contained financial records showing that Mom had been quietly funding household expenses with money from her research grants. Property taxes, utilities, maintenance, all paid for with income from her botanical work. Victoria thought she was inheriting a house paid for by Dad's life insurance and Mom's Social Security. In reality, she was inheriting a property maintained by income from discoveries worth millions. "Your mother left specific instructions," Dr. Larsson continued. "She wanted to wait until after the will reading to tell you about the research. She was concerned that if you knew beforehand, you might feel obligated to share the information with Victoria. Shouldn't I? That's entirely up to you. But you should know that Victoria attempted to have your mother declared mentally incompetent last year." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "She hired an attorney and petitioned for guardianship, claiming Margaret was suffering from dementia and making poor financial decisions. She wanted control of all assets." I thought about Victoria's visits, how she'd constantly complained about Mom wasting money on plants and greenhouse equipment. how she'd suggested it was time to consider professional care facilities. What happened? Margaret submitted to a full psychological evaluation. The results showed her to be of completely sound mind. In fact, her cognitive abilities tested above average for her age group. The petition was dismissed, but the attempt deeply hurt your mother. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Need to discuss timeline for greenhouse cleanup. Can we meet tomorrow morning? Dr. Larson noticed my expression. Speaking of your sister, there's something else you need to know about the will. More surprises? The greenhouse and gardens weren't the only things your mother left you. She also left you all intellectual property rights associated with her botanical research. Every patent, every licensing agreement, every future royalty payment. I stared at him. You're telling me I own the rights to discoveries worth millions of dollars? Exactly. Your mother spent 15 years building a botanical research enterprise that most universities would envy, and she left it all to the daughter who actually cared about her well-being. That evening, I sat in Mom's kitchen, Victoria's kitchen, trying to process everything I'd learned. Victoria arrived at 8 o'clock sharp, carrying takeout containers and a bottle of wine. I thought we could have dinner and discuss the greenhouse situation, she said, settling into what had always been her chair at the family table. I've been thinking, and a week might not be enough time. I could give you 2 weeks if you need it. How generous. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about Mom's research. Victoria paused with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Research? Her botanical work. The greenhouse wasn't just a hobby, Victoria. She was conducting serious scientific research. Don't be ridiculous. Mom grew flowers. Pretty flowers, I'll grant you, but hardly what I'd call research. I pulled out one of Dr. Larson's business cards and slid it across the table. Dr. Henrik Larson from the university seems to think otherwise. Victoria read the card, her expression unchanged. So? He worked with Mom for 15 years. Apparently, she discovered several new species and developed hybrid strains with pharmaceutical applications. Kathy, I think grief is making you imagine things. Mom was a sweet woman, but she wasn't a scientist. I went to the kitchen counter and retrieved the folder Dr. Larson had given me. Bank statements, patent documents, correspondence with research institutions. I spread them across the table like a poker player revealing a royal flush. Victoria's wine glass stopped moving entirely. What is this? Mom's income from her botanical research. She's been earning grants and licensing fees for over a decade. Victoria picked up a bank statement showing deposits of $47,000 from Biodyne Pharmaceuticals. This is impossible. Is it? Did you ever actually pay attention to what Mom was doing out there? She was playing in the dirt with flowers. She was developing treatments for Alzheimer's disease. Victoria went very still. Treatments? I pulled out the patent documentation. She holds patents on hybrid orchid strains that pharmaceutical companies are desperate to license. We're talking about millions of dollars, Victoria. We? Me. She left me all intellectual property rights along with the greenhouse. Victoria's face went through several interesting color changes. That's not possible. Those rights would be part of the estate. No, they're specifically detailed as separate assets. I checked with Mr. Henderson this afternoon. Victoria stood up abruptly, pacing to the kitchen window that overlooked the greenhouse. How much money are we talking about? Current licensing offers start at $12 million. She whirled around. $12 million? For flowers? For revolutionary medical treatments. Victoria's mind was clearly racing. Look, Kathy, I think there's been a misunderstanding about the will. Maybe we should contest it, make sure everything was properly distributed. On what grounds? Mental incompetence. Mom obviously wasn't thinking clearly if she thought greenhouse research was worth millions. I smiled, remembering Dr. Larson's revelation. Actually, you already tried that approach. Last year, remember? Victoria's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. The guardianship petition. The one where you tried to have Mom declared mentally incompetent so you could control her assets. How do you... Victoria caught herself. How do I know? Because Mom kept detailed records of everything, including your attempt to steal her life's work. Victoria sat back down hard. I wasn't trying to steal anything. I was concerned about her making poor financial decisions. Poor financial decisions? Like funding groundbreaking medical research? like spending thousands of dollars on plants and equipment for what I thought was a hobby. What you thought was a waste of money was actually generating hundreds of thousands of dollars in research income. Income that Mom used to maintain this house, pay the property taxes, and cover living expenses while you were off building your real estate empire. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I want half. Half of what? Whatever these patents are worth. I'm her daughter, too, I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. Victoria, you already got your half. You got the $1 million house that Mom's research income helped maintain. That's different. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like Mom divided her assets exactly as she intended. You got the house you always coveted, and I got the work that actually mattered to her. Victoria's jaw tightened. I'll challenge the will. On what grounds? Mental incompetence? We already established that Mom passed a full psychological evaluation with flying colors. Undue influence? I'm the one who cared for her for 5 years while you were conspicuously absent. Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at it and declined the call. Who was that? My real estate agent. We were supposed to finalize the listing details tonight. I leaned back in my chair. You might want to reconsider selling so quickly. Why? Because when news breaks about Mom's research breakthrough, this house is going to be famous. The home where Dr. Margaret Wells conducted the research that could change Alzheimer's treatment forever. You could probably get significantly more money if you wait. Victoria's eyes lit up with the mercenary gleam I remembered from childhood. How much more? Dr. Larson mentioned something about a documentary crew from the Science Channel. They want to film a segment about Mom's work. Apparently, her story, self-taught, botanist makes revolutionary discovery, is exactly the kind of human interest angle they love. Victoria's real estate brain was clearly calculating square footage times fame factor equals increased property value. When? Next week. They want to interview family members and film in the greenhouse. Victoria's expression shifted. Interview family members? The daughter who supported her research by providing daily care, and the daughter who tried to have her declared incompetent. Victoria's face went ashen. You wouldn't? Wouldn't what? Tell the truth about how Mom's own daughter attempted to steal control of her life's work? It wasn't stealing. I was trying to protect her. From what? From conducting research that's going to help millions of people? Victoria stood up again, clearly agitated. Fine, what do you want? I want you to understand what you lost. What I lost? I pulled out my phone and showed her a text I'd received from Dr. Larson an hour earlier. Biodyne just increased their licensing offer to $15 million. The University of California wants to establish a research chair in Mom's honor, and the Smithsonian has requested specimens for their botanical collection. Victoria sank back into her chair. $15 million? That's just the initial licensing fee. Dr. Larson estimates that if the clinical trials continue successfully, the lifetime value of Mom's patents could exceed $50 million. $50 million. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. While you were dismissing her as just a housewife with a garden hobby, a mom was building a botanical research legacy that will outlive us all. Victoria's phone rang again. This time she answered it. Hello? Yes, this is Victoria Wells. What? Are you sure? Her face went white. When did this happen? She hung up and stared at me. What's wrong? That was my business partner. Someone leaked news about Mom's research to the pharmaceutical trade publications. Biodyne stock jumped 12% today on rumors of a breakthrough Alzheimer's treatment. I smiled. Dr. Larson mentioned he was planning to make an announcement. The real estate agent wants to know if we should delay listing the house until the media attention dies down. That could be a while. Dr. Larson thinks the story has legs. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text message, then another, then 3 more in rapid succession. What's happening? She scrolled through her messages with growing alarm. Reporters. They want interviews about the botanical genius next door. Someone gave them my contact information. Probably Dr. Larson. I imagine they'll want to speak with both daughters, the one who supported her mother's work and the one who tried to have her declared incompetent. Victoria set her phone down carefully. How much do you want? For what? To keep quiet about the guardianship petition. I thought about that. The guardianship attempt had been cruel and unnecessary, but it had also failed. Mom had known about it and had still chosen to leave Victoria the house. I don't want your money, Victoria. Then what? I want you to understand that for 30 years, you dismissed Mom as unintelligent and unambitious. You made her feel small and insignificant while she was quietly conducting research that could change the world. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. So what happens now? Now I honor Mom's work. The research continues, the patents get properly developed, and Mom gets the recognition she deserved while she was alive. And me? You got exactly what you always wanted, the big house and the social status that comes with it. Congratulations. Victoria left without finishing her wine. The next morning, I found Dr. Larson waiting by the greenhouse with a woman I didn't recognize, Catherine. I'd like you to meet Dr. Sarah Chen from Biodyne Pharmaceuticals. Dr. Chen was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. Ms. Wells, I'm incredibly sorry for your loss. Your mother was a remarkable woman. Thank you. I know this might seem premature, but we're very interested in continuing your mother's research. Her work with the MW47 strain is the most promising Alzheimer's treatment development we've seen in a decade. We walked through the greenhouse as Dr. Chen explained the significance of Mom's discoveries. The Orchid hybrids weren't just beautiful, they produced compounds that could slow or even reverse certain types of cognitive decline. Your mother was meticulous about documentation, Dr. Chen continued. Her research notes are more thorough than what we see from most PhD researchers. She was self-taught? Entirely, which makes her achievements even more remarkable. Dr. Chen paused at the workstation where Mom had spent countless hours. We'd like to offer you a partnership arrangement. We provide funding and laboratory support. You provide access to your mother's research and the exclusive licensing rights. What kind of funding? We're prepared to offer a $5 million signing bonus, plus 20% of all profits from any treatments developed using your mother's research. I thought about Victoria, probably fielding calls from reporters and trying to figure out how to maximize her property value. There's something else, Dr. Chen continued. We'd like to name our research facility after your mother, the Dr. Margaret Wells Center for Botanical Medicine. That evening, I sat in the greenhouse surrounded by Mom's life's work. The plants seemed different now, not just beautiful flowers, but potential cures, hope for millions of families dealing with Alzheimer's disease. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. We need to talk, I typed back. About what? I think I made some mistakes. Yes, you did. Can we start over? I looked around the greenhouse, at the careful rows of research plants, at the notebooks filled with Mom's precise observations, at the legacy she'd built one small discovery at a time. Victoria, you made your choices. You dismissed Mom's work, tried to control her life, and showed up just long enough to collect your inheritance. I'm not angry about it anymore, but I'm not interested in pretending it didn't happen. I could help with the research. I have business experience. The research doesn't need business experience. It needs respect, patience, and genuine care for the work itself. I could learn. I thought about that. Could Victoria learn to value something that couldn't be quickly sold for maximum profit? Could she develop patience for research that might take years to pay off? Could she find genuine interest in work that required more humility than ego? Maybe, I typed back. But you'd have to prove it, and proving it would take time. How much time? However long it takes. Victoria never responded to that message. 6 months later, the Dr. Margaret Wells Center for Botanical Medicine officially opened. The ceremony was attended by researchers from around the world, pharmaceutical executives, and Alzheimer's advocacy groups. Victoria was there, sitting in the back row. She'd kept the house but had never listed it for sale. Apparently, the property had become something of a pilgrimage site for botanical researchers and Alzheimer's families, hoping to see where the breakthrough research had been conducted. After the ceremony, she approached me. Congratulations, she said simply. Thank you. I've been reading about Mom's work. I never realized. No, you never did. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I sold my real estate business. That surprised me. Why? I wanted to understand what Mom found so compelling about slow, patient work that might not pay off for years. And I enrolled in community college, biology classes. I studied her face, looking for signs of the calculating opportunism I'd grown up with. Instead, I saw something I'd never seen before: uncertainty, humility, maybe even genuine interest. "It's harder than I expected," Victoria continued. "Learning about plant biology, understanding cellular structures, grasping how breeding programs work. I always thought I was the smart one because I could close real estate deals quickly. Intelligence comes in different forms. Mom was brilliant, wasn't she? Not just smart, brilliant. Yes, she was." Victoria looked around the research facility, taking in the sophisticated equipment, the dedicated researchers, the wall of photographs showing Mom's discoveries. I wasted so much time thinking she was just playing with flowers. "You did. Can I ask you something?" "What?" "Do you think she would have forgiven me?" I thought about Mom's final years, how she'd quietly conducted groundbreaking research while Victoria dismissed her as intellectually inferior. How she'd funded household expenses with income from work Victoria considered worthless. How she'd endured an attempted guardianship petition from her own daughter. But I also thought about the will. Mom could have left Victoria nothing. She could have exposed the guardianship attempt publicly. Instead, she'd left Victoria the house and the dignity of a private family matter. "I think Mom understood that people sometimes need time to grow up," I said finally. Even when they're in their 50s, Victoria's eyes filled with tears, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her since childhood. "I'd like to visit the greenhouse sometimes, if that's okay. Just to sit where she worked and try to understand what she was thinking about." The greenhouse is part of the research center now. It's open to the public. I know, but I mean, could I visit as her daughter? Not as a stranger learning about a famous scientist, but as someone trying to understand her mother? I looked at Victoria, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never expected to see. She looked lost, unmoored from the certainty that had always defined her. "Yes," I said. "I think Mom would have liked that." 2 years later, the MW47 strain completed its clinical trials. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. The treatment didn't just slow Alzheimer's progression. It actually improved cognitive function in 60% of patients. Victoria finished her associate degree in biology and enrolled in a bachelor's program. She sold the house on Willowbrook Avenue and donated the proceeds to the research center, keeping only enough to cover her education expenses. "I want to understand what she understood," Victoria told me. "Not for money, not for recognition, just because it matters." She moved into a small apartment near the university and got a part-time job in the research center's greenhouse, tending Mom's original plants under Dr. Larson's supervision. Last month, Victoria published her first research paper, a continuation of Mom's work on orchid hybridization. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it was solid. Careful science that built respectfully on our mother's foundation. The night before the paper's publication, Victoria and I sat in Mom's old greenhouse, now preserved as part of the research center. "Do you think she knows?" Victoria asked. "About the research success? The center? The fact that her work is helping people? About us? That we finally figured out how to be the daughters she deserved?" I looked around the greenhouse, at the plants Mom had lovingly cultivated, at the workstation where she'd made discoveries that would outlive us all. I think Mom always knew we'd get there eventually. She just had more patience than the rest of us. Victoria smiled, a real smile, not the calculated expression I'd grown up seeing. "She was brilliant," Victoria said again. "Not just about plants, about people too." Yes, she was. Sometimes the inheritance that seems worthless turns out to be priceless. Sometimes the sister who gets everything discovers she had it all wrong from the beginning. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get a second chance to understand what really matters. The greenhouse taught us that the most valuable things often grow slowly, require patient attention, and reveal their worth only to those willing to truly see them. Thanks for reading. Don't forget to share if this story touched you. We all need reminders that it's never too late to grow into who we're meant to be. To grow into who we're meant to be.